Peppa and Susie decided to go to the beach. The clouds were gathering. Waves roared with gloomy thunder, and the wind howled. The girls began building sand castles. Suddenly, they noticed a dark whirlpool in the water, pulling everything around it. Suddenly, the water monster emerged from the water, sinister with shiny scales and creepy, empty eyes. "I've been waiting for you," he said. "I guard this abyss and take everyone to the bottom." This abyss has swallowed many. It takes those who are not afraid of their fears. If you want to learn its secret, you need to throw something precious to you into this abyss. Susie threw her favorite toy into the whirlpool. The water in the abyss splashed, and terrifying faces of lost souls appeared on the surface. Peppa threw her favorite ball, and at that moment, the whirlpool boiled over, swallowing her soul. "You have become part of me. Now you will stay in this abyss forever." Their souls were pulled into watery silence. When they opened their eyes, they found themselves on the dark seabed. They noticed two red eyes watching them from the darkness. Suddenly, a terrifying sea duck jumped out, sharp-toothed and enormous. Peppa thought it looked familiar. The duck transformed into an even more horrifying silhouette that chased them across the seabed. The girls tried to swim faster, but their strength was fading. Suddenly, they spotted a small cave and quickly hid inside. The duck swam past. They caught their breath, but then light appeared behind them again. This time, two green eyes. With a wild scream, they jumped out of the cave. Behind them emerged a huge sea dragon with sharp teeth, long whiskers, and enormous claws. It wrapped its tentacles around them and dragged them into its cave. No one ever saw them again. Peppa was standing in the yard, looking at the sky through a telescope when she saw a shooting star. Except it wasn't a star, but something angular flickering with red lights. It fell behind a hill silently. A black flash lit up the sky. From the woods came metallic screeches and bubbling sounds. Peppa's phone rang. A video call from Susie. Susie looked frightened.
"Peppa, I saw it from my window. Don't go there."
The connection distorted. Susie's face twitched and froze in a strange grimace before the screen went dark. Peppa walked with a flashlight through heavy air. Black slime covered tree trunks. Footsteps echoed around her, not behind her, but from all sides. The clearing was empty except for a pulsating black vortex in its center, made of sludge and metal. And nearby stood a tall, thin creature with charred black skin, cracked like dry earth. Its long arms had many joints. Instead of a face, a glowing red slit. It was rummaging through debris. Peppa saw Susie's phone nearby and tried to grab it. Suddenly, the creature straightened sharply. Its face turned toward Peppa. An piercing metallic scream filled the air as black tentacles slithered out of the vortex. Peppa ran back, her mind echoing with Susie's distorted voice. "Stay, watch." She stopped at a shed, turned around. The forest was dark and calm again. She took a breath. She looked up at its roof. There stood Susie, her skin gray and cracked with tiny red points for eyes, her mouth stretched into a horrifying smile. Susie waved her arms and jumped down. A sudden movement. She grabbed Peppa by both wrists instantly. Behind Susie, other figures emerged from shadows. Gray, cracked with red-eyed points, they silently encircled Peppa. Susie tilted her grotesquely smiling head toward Peppa's face. From her throat burst that same metallic scream, the one heard in the woods. In Peppa's eyes reflected Susie's red points, and suddenly faint red glow ignited within her own pupils as well. Peppa was warming her hands by the fireplace. A family photo in a frame lay nearby. Papa's face in the photo turned. His eyes became coal black. A smile stretched across his face to his ears. Black drops were sliding down the glass of the frame. Peppa jumped up. She recoiled. The photo under the glass was pulsating. Dark liquid began to appear beneath the frame. Peppa grabbed the frame and ran to the attic. She opened an old chest, threw the photo inside, and slammed the lid shut. A dull thud sounded from inside the chest. Immediately, a second, louder thud followed. Shadows stirred on the walls. They merged into short figures with empty eye sockets. They moved toward the chest. Peppa descended into the basement for a flashlight. Damp stains on the walls were moving, taking on faces from the photo. Distorted, crying faces. In a far corner, an amorphous mass of black sludge and tangled shadows pulsed. Tentacles stretched from it toward the ceiling. Dozens of red eyes on the mass suddenly opened wide and stared at Peppa. Low, shadowy figures crawled out of the mass, creeping toward Peppa across the floor and walls. Peppa ran out of the basement. Standing before her was Daddy Pig, holding that very same frame. Its glass shattered, and inside, the photo had turned black, except for Peppa's silhouette. Black liquid was dripping from the frame onto the floor, sizzling as it hit. I found an old frame in the attic. Daddy's voice sounded metallic and lifeless. Peppa stepped back. Daddy dropped the frame. Black tentacles burst out of it, wrapping around Peppa's legs. Daddy's face began to melt, black drops streaming down as it turned into a shadow. A loud bubbling noise came from below. Suddenly, figures began emerging from darkness. They surrounded Peppa. Peppa pressed herself against a wall. Tentacles squeezed her legs. The shadowy figures approached. More clearly now, they were other family members, all with distorted faces like Daddy's. The black mass climbed up the walls, flooding onto the floor and reaching toward Peppa. Peppa and George were building a castle in the sandbox. The sand beneath their feet trembled. Suddenly, holes appeared in the ground. Dark, sticky pits. A black tentacle grabbed George's dinosaur. The holes vanished instantly. The sand felt cold, heavy. Round mounds started to rise all around it. One of them opened, revealing a black, sandy mouth full of teeth. Peppa grabbed George and they ran toward the house. The mouth growled behind them. Waves of sand rippled under their feet. Evening. The backyard. Shadows were growing longer. From a new hole, George's dinosaur crawled out, covered in shiny black sand, its red eyes glowing. The toy turned its head and looked at Peppa. The dinosaur's teeth had turned black. All the sandy patches in the yard began to stir. Tentacles of black sand stretched out toward the children. The entire yard became a sea of moving black sand. A giant faceless figure emerged. In its mouth, absolute darkness. Peppa and George ran into the house. On the walls, a flickering reflection appeared. Behind Peppa stood 1,000 barely visible sandy hands. Peppa slammed the door shut. George was crying. Black sand tapped against the glass and crept up the walls of the house. Soon it began slipping under the door. Grains of sand fell from the ceiling onto Peppa's shoulder. She ran to the kitchen. The hourglass on the table flipped over, and the sand inside turned black. In the window's reflection, Peppa saw her own face, but her eyes were filled with black sand. The walls began to form a shifting message, written in sand. "You will not leave." Peppa returned to the hallway. A shadow flickered. George was standing there, but without a face and with eyes made of black grains. In the corner of the room, the sand gathered into a tall arch, through which distant laughter could be heard, though no one was laughing.